Today I'm making a traditional Neapolitan style pizza. It's a very detailed recipe, so I will explain why and how to calculate and customize the recipe to your need. For me, the sweet spot of the dough is 72 hours, but if you wanted to, you could just ferment it for 1 or 2 days instead. Let's get started with the pizza dough. Grab a big bowl. Into the bowl, measure out 446 grams of cold water. The water should be around 16 to 17 degrees Celsius. Measure out your flour. You need 686 grams of 00 flour. I used this grey salt from France. I need to grind it up and weigh out 18.6 grams. I prefer to use this salt when fermenting and baking, but normal sea salt works fine. So to the water, I'm adding the salt first, and then just a small portion of the flour to begin with. I'm just dissolving the salt a little bit. I add about 10% of the flour before I add the yeast. Add 2 grams of fresh yeast. Make sure all the yeast is dissolved before you add the flour. I like to add the flour in batches. This makes it easier to hydrate all the flour. When all the flour is incorporated, you need to build some strength. This technique is called slap and fold. You slap and fold over a few times. Cover up for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, start stretching and folding the dough. You take a part of the dough, stretch it out and fold over to the other side. Turn the bowl and repeat on all sides. There is a total of 3 stretch and folds, and you need to let it rest for 30 minutes in between. Second stretch and fold, same process as before. At this point you start to see that it's getting easier to stretch, but also getting tighter for every stretch and fold. This is how it looks after the third stretch and fold. Now it needs to rest for 2 hours before portioning. While the dough is resting, I'm giving the containers a light coating of olive oil. Cut the dough into 4 or 5 pieces, depending on the size you're going for. The optimal size for a pizza is 260 to 270 grams per portion. Stretch out the sides and tuck them underneath to form tension. Give them a quick roll on the work surface. For an even rise, you need to tighten up the ball. You do this by cupping your hands in front of it, pulling the dough towards you, rotating and repeating until you get a smooth ball. Place them in your containers upside down and into the fridge for 3 days. This is a very easy way to calculate the recipe. Write down all the percentages and then you can customize your recipe. You start with an amount of flour, in this case 686 grams. From there you can calculate the rest of the ingredients. I'll put the percentages and the recipe in the description down below. Super simple sauce. You need 2 cans of good quality San Marzano tomatoes. Mash them up in a bowl and discard the liquid part. That you can use for another recipe. Season with salt, olive oil and tear up some leaves of basil. For the white pizza, I'm tearing up some chanterelles, frying them in oil together with some fresh zucchinis from the garden. I want some char marks on the zucchinis before I add the chanterelles. Then toss the chanterelles around until golden and set aside. The table is set, I have all my ingredients. I'm opening a bottle of wine and then we can start cooking. You need a good amount of flour. Start by pressing from the middle out to the sides without pushing out the air from the crust. Flip over and do the same thing on the other side. For the stretching, place both hands on opposite sides stretch and turn at the same time. You don't need to learn any fancy techniques throwing pizza doughs around. This works fine. When you're happy with the size and shape of your pizza, start with the toppings. In the bottom, put your desired amount of tomato. Try not to get it on the crust. On top, a few fresh tomatoes from the garden, fresh mozzarella, a good drizzle of olive oil, a few fresh leaves of basil, and some flaky salt. A good tip is to use semolina flour underneath so it doesn't stick like mine did. Either way, you have to be fast and get it in the oven as fast as possible. Just with a swift motion, push it in, rotate every 90 seconds until you have a good color and no doughy spots in the bottom. Next pizza is an andouille pizza. Same kind of base, tomato sauce and mozzarella, and a really good quality andouille on top. Same thing in the oven, rotate every 90 seconds, check the bottom. Last and final pizza, the pizza bianco. On top, mozzarella, the chanterelles and zucchini, beautiful mangalice lardo, and some freshly grated pecorino.